Hi, Neil. Welcome to the WeChat Tech podcast. How are you?
I'm awesome. Awesome. Overheating from the delights of a Phoenix summer, but otherwise all good.
Awesome. Look, what we'll start off with, Neil, is just ask for intro from yourself. So yeah, give us a quick intro on who Neil is.
All right. I'm Neil, the CEO of a company called Portainer.io. I've been the CEO of Portainer since we established it in 2016. And yeah, my goal and Portainer's goal is to remove as much complexity from technology as humanly possible, to help any type of organization with any level of IT competence successfully embrace, adopt, and gain business benefit from the likes of Docker and Kubernetes. Prior to Portainer, I was a CEO of a public cloud provider. I've been a CIO of an e-commerce company, and I was a consultant at IBM and with VMware for many years. So, technical guy, basically.
Nice, fair enough. Well, where are you from, Neil? Where did it all begin for you?
I'm originally from New Zealand. I have lived now in 4 countries around the world, which is better than one, but less than 10. I was in New Zealand. I've lived in Auckland. I've lived in Wellington, and then I moved to Singapore. From Singapore, I moved to Indonesia, and now I'm in the US. So I like to bounce around. I was a first generation New Zealander, and I think that makes me a little bit of a nomad. Um,
Fair
so
enough. Do you get bored in each country? That way you move around so much, or
um, maybe.
Which one's been the favorite, Neil?
I quite like Singapore, but I was saying to my wife yesterday, I'm kind of beginning to fall in love with America just because there's some, not necessarily America in general, but Phoenix, because there's so much amazing outdoor adventure activities.
Is Singapore as advanced as everyone says? I've not been personally. Everyone says how advanced it is technology wise and that side of things.
America,
Singapore.
Singapore, sorry, Singapore, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's an incredibly safe country, and everything is digital. Everything is digital. You don't need to go anywhere to do anything. You just do it all online. And yeah, the safest country that I think I've ever traveled in.
wowzer, fair enough. I guess in terms of your career, Neil, you've obviously been CEO for a long time now, I suppose, in today's world. Um, Before that, in your first few years, were you a technologist from the start of your career, or were you more into sort of sales, marketing, and what's your journey been like in that respect?
No, I am purely a technologist. I actually, believe it or not, started in IT when I was 17, straight from school, and was out fixing computers, laptops, printers, in fact, even with a small company in New Zealand. Then I got headhunted into IBM. I joined IBM when I was 19, and I stayed there for, I think it was about 14 years. As a field service engineer, and then later on a virtualization and storage engineer. That got me some pretty high profile engagements under my belt. But I am absolutely a technologist at heart. I have spent many a night in the data center hot aisle, um, 3 a.m. Server hardware replacements
Oh God.
and VMware updates and all that kind of stuff that you'd imagine. So I
I bet
like
you don't
to
miss that.
I like to call myself an accidental CEO. I'm a techie who built a product that people like, and now I'm the CEO of the company that needs to commercialize that.
So you doing VMware way before way before they sold to Broadcom then 2 years ago?
My first VMware deployment was in 2001. It was the first deployment into New Zealand.
Wowzer. Wow.
Yeah,
Were you using
I'm that
Tanzu Neil
old.
at all? But was Tanzu even a thing back then or not? Tanzu Pivotal before that or
Well, Tanzu was only a thing like maybe 24 months
Right.
ago. So back then it was the very early days of VMware. In fact, it was ESX version 2 that I was deploying. So that was a long time ago. And I needed, to be fair, there are a lot of synergies between VMware back then and Kubernetes right now. To install VMware, I needed 2 ring binders about this thick, and I was thumbing through the pages to walk through the incredibly complicated steps to get the thing running. When I left being a techie with VMware around 2010, I think it was, um, then anybody could install it because the whole thing was wizard driven, and it was very, very easy to get something production ready up and going. No training needed, no manual needed, just a wizard walking you through. And a lot of that, by the way, is what inspired Portainer. It was like, oh my goodness, this technology is much like VMware back in the day. It's missing all this tools to allow anybody to install it and configure it safely.
All about simplicity, right? So going from that as well, then Neil, obviously you've had a very sort of long career in tech, and you're very sort of vastly experienced, I guess. So talk us through your sort of journey of, or sort of the reason behind why you decided to build sort of Portainer, and where the idea came from, and yeah, the journey from sort of where it started.
Yeah, so it actually all started from my own 6 months of migraines. I needed to try and relearn technology. So yeah, I like to argue with myself that I was very much at the top of my game in the VMware field. I knew what I was doing. I could walk into any kind of customer situation, ask a whole bunch of questions, understand their needs and the landscape, and come up with a incredibly comprehensive solution architecture like that. It was very, very straightforward. And then I needed to move into the world of containers, and it was like, oh my goodness, I am now back at the lowest rung of the ladder now. How do I climb that thing quickly? And I just found, even with all of these years of experience, I found it quite difficult to reassociate the new capabilities. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be an easier way to do this. At the same time, I was running a public cloud company. And I decided, hey, look, I'm going to try and offer a container as a service offering to market. So why don't I, and that, which is why, by the way, I was learning Docker in the first place. Why don't I try and create some simple cloud provider portal to sit across the top? And that was the early beginnings of Portainer, was a cloud provider user self-service portal to allow them to engage with and manage my container as a service platform. And then it kind of spun off from there and went ballistic.
Wow, fair play. And you said to me, Neil, so when we first spoke about a month or so ago, it is open source, right, as well, so everyone can use it as a free plan and a paid plan as well. Is that correct?
So Portainer is an open core company. So we have an open source version which we spin out of our commercial core. So we actually have a core version of Portainer, and we have an open source variant of it. They are fundamentally two different products in regards to capabilities. So the open source one is designed for kind of lab environments and hobbyists and small deployments where you don't really need the tick of the CISO or a CTO. But if you do need that tick of approval, like a normal RFP checklist of requirements, then that's the paid edition.
And you've built up over 1 million people in that sort of core group of the open source versions. Is that correct?
The open source version, there's about 1 million people use it any 1 month. It fluctuates. We like to rein back some of our anonymous analytics because it gets a bit expensive. So some months we actually turn back some of the tracking of it. But yeah, it's around 1 million open source users, and then of our paid version, we have a freemium version. And this last check, about 200,000 people using our free commercial version, and then we have our paying customers on top.
I think it's like you said, Neil, at the start, it's almost like you're relieving like a headache for a lot of people. I think that's why it's taken off, like you said, and a lot of people have taken interest. Did you experience any sort of early challenges, or sort of anything that was quite complicated at the start of sort of building it, or was it all sort of relatively sort of straightforward? How was it from
Oh
that
my God, I don't even know where to begin. When you're building a product on top of a product that is in current active development, like Kubernetes and Docker was actively being developed, and so every single release there was a breaking change. And so, yeah, of our own engineering time, I would say a third of our engineering time was just keeping up with the changes of the platform that we were orchestrating underneath. And so, it was like, yeah, two steps forward, one step back in some regards, building. But outside of that, if you think who finds a product like Portainer appealing, it's those people who don't actually care about all of the switches and dials of the underlying technology. You just want to use containers. You don't really care about it. Well, in the early days of technology adoption, most people who are adopting the technology, the early adopters, like the challenge that comes with it. And so they find a product like Portainer a little bit frustrating because it removes some of the kudos that comes with being able to grasp a very, very technically complicated product. They can't stand up on stage at a conference and say, look at me, I did this amazing thing, but I use Portainer. It doesn't gel. Whereas now in the market, it's the mainstream adopting containers at quite a pace, and they have very low pain threshold, and so just want this stuff taken care of.
From that as well, Neil, what's your like you said, I mean, obviously, like containerization in general is constantly evolving, and it has over the years, like, evolved sort of continuously. What's your sort of take on how it's changed over the years, like the evolution of containerization? Where do you think it's going, and sort of the direction, how it could sort of, almost support you guys in the future as well at Portainer?
It's really interesting, right? And so in my career, I've gone through quite a few technical innovations. I don't like to say I'm old, but I've done this a few years now. And this current technology iteration, this containerization iteration, over time, it's actually getting more complicated, not less complicated. And I find that particularly interesting. It's like if you think back to the days of the very early days of Citrix as a technology, for example, and we were trying to get thin clients and bring desktops back into the data center, and that got easier and easier and easier, and then virtualization came out, and it started out really hard and got easier and easier and easier. And a lot of that reasoning is because there were commercial companies behind those two core products. Those commercial companies needed to report to Wall Street, Wall Street on their revenue growths, and therefore they needed to get things out of the way that would be stopping a sale and adoption of technology, right? So they focused specifically on removing humans as a barrier to tech adoption. In this new world, the actual cloud native world, the technology is almost entirely owned by a foundation. Their foundation doesn't have those same motivations. They have motivations to add more and more and more capability to make it a bigger, richer product. The moment a product is bigger and richer, it's also more complicated. There's now thousands of companies providing, often one trick ponies, one tool that does one thing in that ecosystem. There's thousands of them. And so as a company looking to adopt Kubernetes, it's like, okay, well, I need to choose. Okay, I'm going to go Kubernetes. Okay, which type? Which distro are you going to go with? SUSEs? Are you going to go with Canonicals? Are you going to go with Red Hats? Are you going to go? Which flavor are you going to go? Okay, now I want networking. Well, which one? Are you going to go some built-in? Are you going to go Cilium? Are you going to go? There's every single layer of the stack. There's hundreds of choices. That is crazy. Choice breeds complexity.
It's almost like designing your own car.
It's exactly like designing your own car.
How do you choose? Sorry, Neil.
No, I was going to say, in fact, I think it's worse. I think it's like designing your own plane, because you're actually going to be running mission critical software on this thing, and if you get a choice wrong and it all comes crashing down, it's bad news to everybody.
Oh dear. How do you choose, Neil? If there's so many tools available per different layer of Kubernetes, for example, how do you choose as a company what to go for? Is it the cheapest thing? Is it the best thing? What do you actually take into account when choosing?
So almost always you'll end up with, there's two ways to look at it, right? The first way is that you'll end up with some consultants, either internal or external consultants, doing a pretty big needs analysis. What kind of capabilities are you wanting? Do you want micro segmentation at the network level? Do you want all these different capabilities? And then you'll build out a massive map of needs. that's more traditional architecture, your consultant-driven architecture, and then you'll go. And then the other side of it is conference-driven architecture, where you turn up to a conference and you hear the coolest new piece of tech and you simply adopt that. My guess is it's a 50-50 split between those who actually genuinely think through the architecture, my needs and what I want to deploy, and those who say, I'm going to deploy this stuff because it's hot right now in the ecosystem. And if it's hot, it must be good.
From that as well, Neil, I mean, I guess you obviously you deal with a lot of sort of companies or I guess individuals, I guess that have a number of sort of problems. I mean, what are sort of the current pain points companies face, I guess, in containerization at the moment?
Uh, I think it's actually trying to mature too soon. Um, you know, Again, if you go back to the early days of virtualization, and before that we had physical servers, we had a person who was responsible for the server. We had a person that was responsible for the networking. We had a person that was responsible for the storage. We had all these different people with discrete roles. Virtualization came along and said, yeah, we're not doing that. We now need a VMware engineer who can now handle virtual networking, virtual storage, virtual servers. And that led to pretty big organizational changes. Well, Kubernetes is doing exactly the same thing. It's now under the guise of platform engineering. But most people just think of this as a piece of technology they're adopting and not the organizational change that has to go alongside it. You have to mature your operational thinking and maturity and processes to support this new technology. So those that really struggle simply think it's a piece of tech and they can bring it in and it'll be fine. Spoiler, it won't. You have to modernize. The other issue is those who go and deploy 30 discrete individual tools when in fact they only needed 3, and then they get themselves all tied up in knots trying to figure out how to use the tools and how to train their people how to use them and then how to upgrade them and support them, and they get themselves into a world of pain that way.
I guess that's very cost effective as well if you're using too much rather than the amount you need as well, I guess.
Totally.
From yourself as well, then, Neil, what would you, following up from the question I asked previously as well? So, when we was discussing about like the evolution of containerization, so where do you see it heading? I know we sort of discussed it's very complicated at the moment. Where do you see it in sort of 3 to 5 years? Do you see like anything coming in to support containerization, like AI or anything that's modernized that's coming into to almost help sort of push it, maybe make it less complicated? Or do you think it's just going to keep getting more complicated for everyone?
So realistically, the technology solves so many infrastructure management problems. Like Kubernetes as a service orchestration layer solves so many problems that we had to try and solve manually previously with command like bash scripts or other external tools or software, whatever else. It solves so many problems. So it's not going anywhere. What I think will happen is it will become like TCP/IP. It's there, but it's irrelevant. No one knows about it. So I realistically think that it'll just become the operating system of the data center or the cloud, if you want to think of it that way. It's just there. Everyone uses it. Everything uses it. Just no one knows or cares that it's actually there. And then tools like Portainer and others will sit on top of it and actually act as a human to machine translation layer to ensure that the thing actually works and functions and delivers business outcomes. That is what I think the future is.
Like a nice user sort of interface where it's very simple for them to just control what's going on behind the scenes.
Correct, and not even necessarily a graphical user interface. It could be with AI a conversational user interface where you're simply talking to the machine and getting answers back from it. So it doesn't have to be a GUI, but yes, there should be a user interface or a human interface, be that conversational, graphical, or command line.
Linking on to that, Neil, as well, is community feedback for you really important to improve the products over time, every year, every month, every week? And how does that work in terms of shaping the products? Do you sort of take that into account and shape certain bits of the tooling from that?
At times it can be overwhelming. If you think how many feature requests we get, it's simply staggering. There's a lot of myths around open source, and a lot of people think if you have an open source product, you're going to get free developers working for you, creating code and creating new features and fixing bugs, and that's just not the case. Open source, 99.999% of Portainer was built by Portainer staff, being paid by Portainer, not the community. What we get from the community, though, is very fast feedback. So if they like a feature, they'll tell us. If they don't like a feature, they'll tell us even faster. If there's a bug, we'll know about it pretty quickly. And yes, we get a lot of feature requests in regards to, hey, I see where you're going with this feature. If you actually go slightly to the left of that feature, it'll end up with a significantly better capability. From our
It's all,
perspective, though, it's still a balancing act, because the open source community represents a subset of our users, not necessarily our large enterprises. So we need to balance the open source community's wishes and desires with the large enterprises that are funding the developers to build the open source thing.
it's almost like getting like free ideas from the user, isn't it? Almost a lot of the time. And if it's great, then you can use it, and there's no contracts in place to say we owe you this amount of money. It's just
No feedback is a terrible thing, because you're trying to design and build in a vacuum, and you've got no idea if what you've designed and built is actually hitting the mark or not. So feedback is absolutely a gift, be that positive or negative feedback. And so without it, I don't think that product would be anywhere near where it is now. There's so much in Portainer now that has been based very closely off community and user feedback.
I think the containerization, just community in general, is very like they like to express their opinions, especially in like the Kubernetes space. I mean, I like to read a lot of articles on Medium. I post a lot on my LinkedIn and stuff through like Kubernetes and side of things, and everyone's got an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. There's so many articles. There's so many like we said, like sort of you said before. There's so many new sort of technologies or tools even that are implementing all the time, and they're trying to think, what's making things quicker and making things better, and it's it's really interesting. Really interesting.
I'm actually really timid to express my opinion in that community, because everyone has an opinion and everyone's quite free to share that opinion, especially counter opinions to other people's opinions. So I'm actually quite timid in that Kubernetes ecosystem. I also have strong opinions about it, and a lot of mine is evident in the product. But you got to be quite careful. I share as much information as I can to that community. Like we speak to hundreds and hundreds of companies every single week that are struggling with adoption, and I try to capture that in ebooks and share them. And often the response back to me sharing an ebook is simply, "What a great sales pitch for Portainer." Like, that wasn't why I did it. That's not the point. The point is, here are all of the pain points. It's like, oh my goodness, it's hard to win.
Do you know what it is, Neil? It's because you've experienced the pain points yourself. So it comes across passionate. And when that happens, then it might come across as like a sales pitch.
Yeah,
But
correct.
it's genuinely because you've experienced the pain points and you come across passionately, because obviously you created it, like you said, based on your experiences and everything that you've done from sort of your past. So it definitely makes sense. So look, leading on from that, I mean, you've obviously you're acting, so going into your sort of your role at Portainer, so you're acting as the CTO and the CEO, right? So how does your role look like, and how do you sort of balance the technical, sort of the deep technical side, and the sort of business strategy side?
that's a big question. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
It is. Now, the easiest way of me explaining this, right? So go and Google or ask AI these days about founder mode business management. It is a school of thought in how you go about running a business. There's founder mode, and then there's the more traditional way that all MBA schools teach you how to run a business, which is hire people and delegate. Right? Founder mode says the founder remains very, very engaged in multiple areas of the business at all times. That is very much where I am now. So yes, I'm the CEO, I'm the CTO, I'm the CPO, I'm the CSO. I'm all these roles across the top, because until we get to escape velocity at what's called in VC world, where the thing is off on some crazy growth tangent, there's no reason why I can't and shouldn't stay across it. By staying incredibly close to many areas of the business, we can actually pivot on a dime. So I can actually listen to market feedback and respond to that feedback very, very quickly. Now, I'm not a developer, so I have to be very, very hands-off with my dev team. Now, of course, I have opinions there, and I think everything should take an afternoon to code, not months. But I'm very hands-off in the coding side of things. But I can absolutely translate what the market is saying to capabilities we need to have in the product, how we should market it out there. So yeah, go.
I think the beauty of it is that you have a tech product. So even though you might be discussing, say, the business strategy side, or it's still technical because it's a tech product. So you're still like, it's not like you're selling something that you're not doing technically, I guess. So it's
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a tool designed for people like me inside companies, right? So I'm basically selling my product to myself. If I can't sell my product to myself, I'm doing something wrong. So it's the CIO in a company who is saying, how do I get this new technology into my organization in the most cost-effective, safe, secure way possible? Okay, I need a product like Portainer. Yeah, so it's designed for hands-on CIOs who actually realistically want to have a bit more oversight and control as to the technology selections in their company. In some organizations, the CIO is incredibly hands-off and just delegates down to their team. Those guys won't use a product like Portainer. They'll go build something open source, hand rolled.
Is there any negatives, Neil, to being the CEO, CTO, CPO, CSO, C something else? So, is there any negatives towards that at the moment for you?
You should ask my wife and my kids, who hardly see me. Um, the answer
they
to that,
forget your name, Neil.
is it is very, very, very little personal time. I just got a message from HR this morning saying that I have 40 days of annual leave overdue, and when am I taking it? And my answer to that question is I have no idea. So
Can't you just
yes,
say
there are.
you can choose whenever you want to take it because you're the CEO? No.
Correct. However, realistically, it's quite difficult. I find it quite difficult to walk away from the coalface. So, again, that might be some of my DNA versus others in the space. But most other founder-led companies have a similar operating model where you just work
Obsessed. Yeah,
obsessed, obsessed.
I feel like we're the same.
we're the same. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we created ours, and we know how you feel, because it's almost like your little baby. So you almost it's hard to switch off. It's
You
hard to
can't
let
switch
go
off.
of anything, and especially when you go on holiday, you say holiday, you're constantly doing things that you shouldn't be doing.
I mean, Portainer is me and I'm Portainer, right? It's one and the same. And so like when I am very, very active in the open source community. I am on Reddit. I'm on Slack channels. I'm answering questions. I'm engaging, not as a Portainer person, as someone who's aware of the technology, the challenges, and I'm trying to help people answer questions. I can't help myself when I see Portainer being talked negatively about to defend it, because that's like talking negatively against me and my vision. So I have to sometimes stop, take a breath, and step back and say, actually, just let it ride. It's okay.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think when it's sort of, if it was personal, if they're attacking Portainer, it's attacking your ideas and your baby as well. We're the same. I think reputation is everything, isn't it? So you need to make sure that everyone else in the company has the same mentality as you and spreads the same message, and there's no sort of like separation or difference with that. And that can be quite hard when you have, how many staff do you have, Neil? 60, 70, 80,
You're getting up
50?
there, 50-ish and growing.
50-ish. That's a lot
Yeah.
of people, isn't it, to sort of make sure they're pushing in the same direction at all times. So that must be quite a challenge to sort of have that every day with different people, different opinions, that
Well,
sort of stuff.
But it's interesting, right? Like Portainer as a product out there in the ecosystem, it's very, very binary. You either love it or you hate it, right? It's very simple. You're either in the camp of users who enjoy playing with the raw technology, or you're not. There's very little, very, very little middle ground. I mean, there's always middle ground, but there's very little. It's either or. And inside the company, I still treat us like a startup, even though we're a bit older now. I still treat us like a startup. You either have a startup mentality or you don't. There's very little organizational hierarchy. Anybody can speak to me about anything at any time. Like I want us to be able to be hyper responsive to changes in the ecosystem, community feedback. And some people like that, some people don't. Some people want quite structure. I'm going to build an 18-month plan, and okay, it's now month one of the plan, I'm going to execute on the plan. Hang on a second, something changed the market, change the plan. Oh, we can't change the plan. So you have to hire people who understand and thrive in that type of hyper dynamic startup hustle and grind culture. Because if you try and bring in corporate people, it ain't going to work.
So going on from that as well, then, Neil. So how was it like building the culture from scratch up? Like how did that work to make sort of? Because I know we mentioned we spoke about already. Sorry, like the developer side. So like you said, you're not a developer, so you just sort of let them get on with it. So how have you built that culture around of like what is the culture of Portainer?
So I don't believe that you build a culture. I believe culture builds itself. I like to lead by being incredibly open and transparent and available. I am probably a little too verbose in our internal Slack channels. I get told many times that I am the creator of 90% of our Slack messages, which is probably true. But that whole hashtag I build in public, I try to bring into the company. Um, and so I really like the idea of the team sharing what they're doing with each other as well. So we are a remote company, 100% remote. And so if you don't share what you're doing, no one knows what you're actually doing. Now, this isn't to be accountable to say I'm actually working. It's so there's a sense of we're building this thing together. And so if I'm out traveling the world, attending conferences, meeting customers, doing cool stuff, it's cool for me and my leadership team. But if no one else knows what's happening, so I like to share that. And so all the way down, I like to say, well, actually, look, even someone, right down the bottom of the stack, share what you're doing. It's interesting. I want to know. Others want to know.
It becomes inspiring because it's it almost gives like inspiration to others to share. And like you said, you've all got one goal, and I think that's where the culture, like you said, it you don't sort of create it, it creates by itself. But I think it's yeah, it all has to happen if everyone's contributing, I guess, into that same part.
Yeah, I bleed passion for for this technology, and that's impossible to hide from, and the team can see that. Yeah, like I'll pump out blog content and ebooks like they're just breeding like rabbits, right? Because I'll actually have a conversation with a customer, or at least a potential customer, and at the end of that conversation, I'll either be so frustrated or so elevated after that call, I'll go and actually put all my thoughts down in a blog and then share it and say, if these guys have the problem, others will too. You can learn from it. So very, very few of my blogs have come out of made up content. Almost every one of my blogs relates back to a conversation I've had or a series of conversations I've had with customers, which is incredibly powerful.
It's funny you say that, Neil. You may have seen my LinkedIn posts lately, but they're all literally about stuff that happens that day or the day before. And it's like
Yep.
raw emotion. I love writing stuff down. That's how I get my thoughts out of my head and sort of de-stress and stuff. So I sit there probably 7 to 9 p.m. most days, just writing about my day. And it just builds so many stories for, people on LinkedIn, and they love it. So I think it's really important to sort of share what you do and what you've
The,
experienced for sure.
there's definitely so much AI generated bollocks at the moment,
Yeah, yeah,
and so to get cut through on genuinely valuable content, the way to do that is straight from the horse's mouth. So
yeah.
at the end of the day, directly after a meeting, sometimes I'll be out physically visiting someone, like a prospect or a customer, and in the car I'll sit on my phone and I actually write down a whole bunch of notes, and I'll put it into a Notion page. I won't blog it right there and then, but I'll come back and then immediately publish it. It's straight from the horse's mouth, raw, unfiltered, and I
Wow,
think
fast
people can
expression.
tell. People can tell the difference between raw, unfiltered versus AI generated, word scrabble.
Absolutely. You see from yourself then, Neil. So you mentioned, Portainer is a remote sort of like fully remote company. So what are the sort of challenges you faced, I guess, in maybe in the hiring side of things, or just having that environment? Because obviously it's not as simple as I always say. I feel like it's really good to have a remote option, but I feel like there's always challenges within that as well. So what sort of challenges have you faced, I guess, in the fully remote aspect of hiring within sort of Portainer across sort of, wherever the guys are based?
I mean, time zones is a big one. We span three time zones, three complete different time zones, being the UK, America, New Zealand. Well, those are inverse of each other. So how the heck do you organize meetings when you've got 8 p.m. and 10 a.m. Or vice versa? That someone is having a bad day to join that meeting at that weird time. So
Most of
time
the time it's
zone.
you.
I had time. That's, by the way, the reason why I actually moved to America. So I'm in the middle. Because
Ah, there you go.
I was working all three time zones and it was killer. So definitely time zone consideration I think is real. Where there is a massive gap between them. Also, when you are hiring around the world, there are cultural differences that you need to be aware of. My upbringing is Kiwi. It is Kiwi / English, and so I've got slang and terms that I use without thinking about it. Sometimes I'm a little bit uncensored in regards to my use of colourful language, because that's so ingrained in our society in New Zealand, right? It's ingrained. It's not seen as a swear word, or you can't do that when you've got other cultures around the world. So you have to constantly think, and make sure that I'm not using anything that's too colloquial or too local or seen as rude or abrasive in other areas. So from that level, there has to be a proxy between the way that I would genuinely truly express myself and how I have to express myself, and I've got people like that all around the world. And then there's hiring. Different people come across differently. Some people come across with absolute, you know, true might and spirit, and skills are somewhere over there. And so you have to cut through that might and spirit to get to the real capability. So yeah, that makes it challenging too.
I mean, I can definitely reflect with your what you were saying about the colourful language, because maybe it's the Birmingham in me, but I'm too transparent, and I have to. I mean,
He's awful,
we have
awful.
conversations with with to be fair, with anyone, and I don't even realize it, but Ben's like, "Oh, you do realize you just
Can't
swore?"
say
And I was
that.
like,
Yeah,
"What? I didn't swear." And
Yeah.
I don't remember saying anything that that, like, again, it's not something out of like militia or anything. It's again, it's just ingrained in you, and yeah.
It's been ingrained since childhood, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
I would drop the F bomb to describe a situation, because
That's same as me.
that's the most emotive way that I know of describing that situation. Oopsie.
it's the same in Birmingham, Neil. I think the F word's probably used in most sentences, to be honest with you. So it's pretty
Yeah.
normal. But obviously, but when we go see a client in London, for example, they're a lot more corporate down in London. So we've got to be careful of sort of not overdoing it as well, in the same way as you sort of have to as well. It's tough, doesn't it? You have to sort of battle it with the interior sort of instincts of your environment and way of looking at stuff.
It's definitely inside voice and outside voice. You have to be
Yes.
in my mind. I'm like, but on the outside, so, yeah,
With a
calm.
few pints as well, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for those who don't know, Neil moved to the US from New Zealand last month, Neil, or this month? Very, very recently.
Last
Um,
week.
last week. So he's on to Phoenix, Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. So what was the sort of, apart from the time zone you mentioned a second ago, what's the other motives behind that?
So I spend about 170 days of the year in the US anyway. It's where 60% of our customers are based. And was getting sick to death of living out of a suitcase. Because New Zealand to America is a long way. It's roughly 18 hours travel time. I didn't want to be flying up to see a customer and flying back. That is a killer. You age very quickly. I'm actually 17. That's not true, but yeah, you age very quickly when you're sitting in the back of an airplane. And so I was like, so I'd actually say, okay, look, I'm going to arrange sort of 2 months worth of back to back to back to back to back customer visits, and I'd sit down and I'd have them all planned out, and then I'd travel for 2 months in a suitcase, and it was like, this is crazy. So I wanted somewhere that I could fly up to, have a wardrobe of clothes in it, and then I can bounce in and out of there as I need to across the time to go visit customers. You will never stop me getting FaceTime to see customers, so let's make it as feasible as possible.
It's the best way, isn't it, to build rapport with these people?
Yes,
1,000%,
You'd be
100%.
amazed how many companies these days can't be bothered and simply want to do Zoom calls and emails. If you actually make an effort, you
Real
win a lot
shame.
of favor.
Yeah, it's a real shame as well. I think the world's definitely changed since COVID, I think as well. So
We've
it's
experienced
fine.
it firsthand for sure.
But then also, as I was traveling around America, looking at all of the cities, this is the city where I felt the most at home. There's, like you again, you can't take the Kiwi out of me. I still like to be in the outdoors, and there's so much outdoors here.
What sort of
Where
activities are in Arizona? Is it very mountainy? Is it
it's
or is it?
It's
amazingly
mining,
mountainy.
isn't it, Neil?
It's mining, believe it or not. I have the most ridiculous hobby, which is abandoned underground mine explorations. I was thousands and thousands of feet underground on the weekend, exploring an old silver mine. It was actually a silver mine with a big fluorite vein through it, so it was beautiful purple rock all the way through this mine.
Where,
Um,
where did this passion come from for mining?
well, in New Zealand
Minecraft
has
pizza.
Minecraft. No, New Zealand has lots of old gold mines. I don't know, man. Am I a reincarnated miner from the 1800s? I don't know. I just find it incredibly interesting to come across old ore carts from the 1800s, or old sticks of dynamite, or all sorts of cool old stuff you find in these old abandoned mines.
No, do you watch them gold mining shows?
Too modern.
Ah,
However, across of MacGyver and Indiana Jones, absolutely, which is again showing my true age. So MacGyver and Indiana
Interesting.
Jones.
yeah, because they use too much technology now for the mining. I watch it, to be fair. Like, I don't know, it just comes up, and I just watch it because I find it quite interesting as well. But um, yeah, they've got some crazy technology. It's not like what you were saying, like going into like into a mine or whatnot, and doing it sort of firsthand. You're doing it old school.
Well, like the one on the weekend, there's a stope which is a carved out hollow area inside in the underground, and this thing was 700 feet from top to bottom, and about maybe 20 feet wide. That's all done by hand, man. That's some real
I,
men have
I
carved
would
that
get
out.
so claustrophobic,
Yeah,
like
same.
in that space. I don't know. It just
Can you die, Neil, doing that? Can you actually get killed by the if the soil just sort of like consumes into itself and just covers you? Is that possible?
Well, it's rock, not soil, so
Sorry. Well,
it
both. Yeah.
It, it's carved out of rock. It's been there hundreds of years. Just don't go in there with a pickaxe and be picking at the walls.
Okay.
You have all the safety precautions. You've got gas meters that you carry with you. You're wearing helmets. You've got all the gear. There's rope.
Why did
You've
I
got
say soil for
harnesses.
then? I was
Hmm?
doing some gardening this morning. I have soil stuck on my head for some reason. So very
If
strange.
it was soil, I wouldn't go in it because that's incredibly dangerous.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. How do you get down there, Neil? Is it for like on a rope sort of thing, and you go down like that, or do you walk down some stairs? How does it all? work from that point of
So
view?
a lot of them have like a horizontal shaft, which is how they actually haul the ore out. So you go in those things, and once you're in, there's ladders up, ladders down. But
Wow.
yeah, I don't
Really cool.
I don't recommend that you do it unless you really enjoy that stuff. Again, I I was a Boy Scout for many years, and I think that kind of ingrained into me this crazy outdoor adventuring thing. So
Well, there you go. You like to be adventurous.
just
There we are.
just call me, Bear Grylls slash techie at the edge. That's that kind of thing.
Fair play. Neil, one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self, what would that be?
Buy Bitcoin. No,
Oh, mate, you and me both. XRP, Neil, now. XRP, army.
really.
Yeah, XRP. I've got some XRP.
No,
We'll see.
I think uh, for me, I have always enjoyed pushing myself. I have always put my career on top of everything else. That's been quite difficult on my family, and so I think remaining as passionate and engaged while still having enough time and balance for family, I think it is a key thing. So that's it, which is probably a bit deeper than you're wanting, but that's kind of
No,
it.
no.
Is
So,
actually try and balance.
so if you turn back the clock, would you spend less time on Portainer, on your career, and more time with the family, do you think? Or
I would try to get a better balance. Could I spend less time in the business? I don't know. I think that would be very difficult. But I definitely would have preferred to spend more time with my family. I mean, my kids are now adults, and I'd love to be able to spend more time with them as they're growing up. But you're building a business. This is my third or fourth business I've built now. You're building. So there's always something to do, hustle to do, and customers to visit or somewhere to go. So it's hard. I think any founder who's got work-life balance right needs to write a book on how they've done it, because I don't know many founders who have done it well.
I think that's the next step for you, Neil. You have to write a book.
Yeah, I actually have written a book and published it on the journey so far,
There
with
you
all
go.
my learnings. It's actually a raw, it's a short book because it's what will actually end up being chapter one. But again, build in public. I've released chapter one basically as its first little ebook, which is a raw, unfiltered take of how to build a global business by accident. Um, as
So,
opposed to
so
sitting down and
from that, Neil,
saying,
what would you go from there, Neil? Then what would you say? Was obviously you've experienced it firsthand, and you're very much like you like to document things, and you can obviously see you like to reflect, and um, like you said, you're very community driven, and what you do. So for someone that is not exactly in the same position, but someone that is looking to start something that could be like a tech business or another tool, create another tool. What piece of advice would you give them? From your experience that sort of you've been with.
uh, eyes wide open. Yeah, don't go into building a business thinking that it's going to be easier than being employed. It's not. There is a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. I'm responsible for 50 families. Like if I make bad decisions, 50 families are potentially impacted. If I make good decisions, 50 families are impacted. So there is a lot of weight on my shoulder, in that regard. So eyes wide open. You are building something that will absolutely impact the lives of your staff, and hopefully yourself too. But eyes wide open. It with great reward comes great sacrifice.
100%. I think in terms of like your career, you've obviously done so many different things and wore different hats, Neil, across the board for 20 plus years now in the world of technology. Um, is there any final thoughts from you in terms of leadership, technology, community building, that sort of stuff?
I think there was a pushback on the idea of a enterprise architect. Um, if you think back a few years, enterprise architects got a bad rap because they were known as ivory tower architects, and they like to build white elephants. But the actual process of going through an enterprise architectural roadmap, I think, was actually quite sound. It's what outcomes are the business trying to achieve? What are the business inputs, constraints, requirements, all these other things? You have all of these functional and non-functional requirements, supportability, upgradability, manageability, all these things that you take as inputs, and you use all these inputs to then come up with and design a technical solution that's fit for purpose. We kind of turned our back on enterprise architecture, and when I say we, the ecosystem, in favor of bottoms up technology adoption, where devs and engineers are empowered to make decisions on behalf of the business. And in some places that works, in some places that fails miserably. Unless the people making those tech decisions are acutely aware of the business requirements, the outcomes, the constraints, everything around that, decisions are often made in isolation, and decisions and risks accepted on behalf of the business by someone who may not understand the consequence of the risk that they're accepting. And so I would love to see a balanced reuptake of enterprise architecture, not ever back to the ivory tower, white elephant world, because that was terrible, but at least a rebalance back to a happy medium where all of these inputs are gathered before decisions are made.
Awesome. The way we like to end our podcasts, Neil, is basically we ask the previous guests to ask a question for yourself, and
Awesome.
then for you to ask the question for the next person that's going to be in your position, basically. So our last guest was Sana, and Sana's question was, what's the biggest challenge you faced so far in your career?
The biggest challenge in my career, I think moving from being employed to being self-employed was quite a fundamental shift. Yeah, leaving the safe sanctuary of IBM and going out into self-employment. That was quite a leap of faith. And then I think moving out of pure technologist into more of an executive role is also the same. I'm definitely out of my comfort zone, not being inside a data center. I prefer talking to servers and arguing with them as to why they're failing versus humans. So making that change. So those two dynamics. One was leaving the safe sanctuary of employment into self-employment and business building, and second is leaving technology and going into more management type roles.
Awesome. And what would your question be for the next guest?
Given AI is shaking up the world and shaking up everything, AI is definitely eating software and eating everything. How do you get the most benefit from AI without believing it's hype too much?
Nice.
Good
stuff. And for everyone that wants to sort of get involved and stay sort of updated with like your information, your blogs and stuff, how can they do that? How can they stay in touch with sort of Portainer and your blogs and your information?
So portainer.io/blogs has all the blogs, but also my LinkedIn. I share my conversations as they happen on LinkedIn. There's very few filters between me and LinkedIn. So if you want Neil raw and unfiltered, basically follow me on LinkedIn. I accept any LinkedIn invite that I get. So
Fair play. Neil, thanks so much for your time. Obviously, you're a busy man, as we've discussed. So, yeah, it's been good to chat. And I think, hope you've enjoyed it as well, because I think some podcasts can be quite serious and daunting. But I think, yeah, we're trying to be a bit more relaxed and non-corporate. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
I am definitely not corporate.
Same as us. But yeah, no, thank you, Neil.
My
Cheers, Neil.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.